So today, we're going to talk about crafting compelling job postings. And what we're going to make sure everybody leaves here with is an idea of how do I craft a compelling job posting that's going to attract the right type of candidate for my job. And also, not only how do I attract those candidates, but how do I differentiate myself from my competition? People that may not be thinking about how to get the right people to look at the job and say, man, that sounds like it was made right for me. And in the process, enhance your recruitment efforts. Let's make sure we implement some proven strategies that are going to resonate with the right types of people and get the right types of people into our jobs. So I'll launch on what we're going to talk about today. First off, we'll talk a little bit about the PI job target. That's really where we get the data that we're going to need to attract the right type of person and use science and data, a data-driven approach to connect with the things that are going to resonate most with employees for a given or candidates for a given job. And then how do I take that information and put that into our job postings in a way that's very compelling and attracts the right candidate right away? Again, differentiating yourself from the competition. And then we'll also talk about using some of these tools internally for hiring, for succession planning, retention, all of those types of things. So as we get started, you need to go back to this idea of when we're looking for candidates and we're trying to get high performance, where does high performance come from? And how do we best predict that? And so when we look at this graph here, this diagram, on the left side, we're describing fixed assets, things that candidate will bring with them, the behavioral wiring that is in place at a very young age and that we take with us through our entire life. Remember that these are behaviors that we may adapt against, right? We might learn how to act more patiently, but how we are internally and how we respond to the world, that's pretty much constant and it's measurable, scientifically measurable. And then we have the cognitive, which is really just learning style. Does somebody feel more comfortable with complexity, ambiguity, learning quickly? Would they rather take their time, et cetera? So the behavioral and cognitive can be measured in a person. We know that. The other thing we can do is look at any job within our organization and identify what are the key behaviors and cognitive capabilities we need for somebody to be more likely to be successful in that job, more likely to enjoy the job, to be engaged in it. And so by using that together, this left side, we're able to identify the right candidates for the right job. What we're going to talk about today is how do I then go out and reach out and communicate to those candidates and say, look here, I've got a job that's perfect for you. And when we're not using this left side, then traditionally we go to the right side, the top right, more specifically, right? We look at resume. What are the skills? What's the education the person has? The criterion, the experience, the knowledge, right, that they bring to the table. And I'm going to show you a slide that talks about the fact that when we look at resume to try to predict performance, we're looking in the wrong direction. We're not saying throw out resumes, but it is scientifically proven that past experience with an outside company, even in the same role, is not a good predictor of future success. So I'll show that slide, but I can talk to you anecdotally about something that you've all experienced in the past anyway. Have you ever looked at a perfect resume? I mean, it's just absolutely perfect. They've got everything we need. And then you have a wonderful interview and everybody decides this is a perfect hire. And we make the hire only to find out that 1 hour interview was the highlight of that person's career, right? And the best hour they ever gave the company. And we're left wondering why, what happened? And so what happened is somebody put together a good resume, which is supposed to be a marketing document telling you why you should hire me, why I'm great. But anytime you go and call any organization and ask for somebody's experience, or you're looking for a reference, what you're going to get is confirmation of dates, confirmation of title, but you're not going to have anybody tell you how engaged that person was, how much they enjoyed the job, or really even how good they were at the job. And nobody on a resume says, I worked here for 1.5 years and I was terrible, so they finally fired me. Or I worked here for 3 years and I was never fired, but I never enjoyed it, never liked it, was always looking for something different. And we all know that stuff's true. You're just not going to see that on the resume. What we're trying to get to is this bottom right-hand corner, right? This discretionary effort. It's the little things that the high performers do day in and day out that makes us wish we had tons of them, right? It's the extra effort. It's the engagement. And what we know is that normally comes from somebody who likes the job they do, who enjoys the work they're doing, and who wants to then lead in and get better at it. So if we look at this entire diagram together, by hiring the person who's got the right behavioral cognitive fit to more likely enjoy the job they're doing, they're also more likely to give you that discretionary effort to lean in and to learn more, which means the top right, which is really what you're looking for, is not necessarily their experience in the past or their knowledge in the past, but what will they bring to us? What will they learn in our job? How well will they do the tasks we need them to do? And will they be here 6 months, a year, 5 years from now, continuing to excel? That's what we're predicting when we put all of this together. So when we think about that, how do we then attract the right candidate? Well, this is the study that I was talking about from Florida State University, where they did a meta study. So this is basically a study of dozens of studies that were all on job postings and experience and hiring people based on past experience. First thing they found is that 82% of all job postings did require some sort of experience. This is including entry-level jobs where I can train somebody to do it. I actually worked with somebody once who was managing a call center and told me that, and this is an entry-level position, he was going to start hiring people who had at least 2 years experience that were answering phones and solving problems. I said, why are you looking to find people that have experience in this entry-level job? And he said, Dave, I'm just really tired of hiring people who get bored with the job, who can't sit at a computer and pay attention, who don't follow a process, who just end up really not enjoying the work they're doing. So again, his logic was, I'm going to look for people who have done this entry-level job elsewhere. Well, why are they leaving that job? And why are they coming to you? And why are they comfortable with a lateral position? These are questions he wasn't thinking about because, frankly, he was trying to look for good candidates. The PI tells me all the things he was looking for, right? But he was looking for it in experience. Well, the kinds of experience that are normally posted for is overall years of experience, job experience in specific types of roles. All of that is what was asked for. But so here's what the Florida State study found. And that is that when it came to predicting future performance within a given organization, past performance with other organizations was a terrible predictor. It was a 0.01 correlation to future success. In other words, almost zero. And the same thing about voluntary or involuntary turnover, that because somebody did this job somewhere else was not a good predictor of whether they would do it for us long-term, be around for a while. And frankly, that's even if they did that same job. So we're not saying throw experience out. And of course, if you're hiring because you need credentials, somebody needs a license because they're a practitioner, a medical practitioner, a certified teacher, right? We understand that. But when it comes to something I can hire for, why not find the right type of person and then expand our pipeline? So when we go back to the other thing about this whole idea of resumes is I spend a lot of time looking at resumes if that's what I'm using to decide who we're going to interview, right? I'm going to look at tons and tons of resumes to try to find that relevant experience. I may find that I'm hiring or I'm interviewing a whole bunch of people who are not a good fit to the job. Whereas if we look at the behavioral and cognitive first, a couple of things are going to happen. We can really cut down our phone screening and interview screening or resume screening time by taking people who are so unlikely to like the job that we're frankly wasting time. And if we were to hire them, we've got a really high chance they're not going to enjoy the job and they're not going to be a high performer and they're not going to be around for a long time. So why not cut down significantly our phone screening and resume screening time and look at candidates who are actually more likely to enjoy the job? And then for positions that really can be trained, why not even not worry so much about the resume and worry more about whether this person behaviorally and cognitively is going to love the work I'm doing? We now widen our pipeline of quality candidates, have more people to talk to, and we're getting ahead of our competitors who may not have access to those candidates because they don't know what they're looking for. Think about it. Every high performer started somewhere. So if I've got a position I can train for, why not find the right people and have them start with me? So how do we find those people? First off, we're going to start with the job target. So the PI job target is where we define a standard of excellence, right, for behaviors and cognitive that are likely to provide high levels of performance and consistency over time. So let's talk about an example of what a PI job target might look like, what it might sound like to take some of the verbiage that comes out of the job report and allows us to attract the right candidates. Let's just start with a position of medical drug researcher. Now, I might be looking for experience, right? A degree in science, medicine, emphasis on research, specific fields of medicine, number of years, et cetera. And then the skill I'm looking for is their ability to run and understand tests, right? Needed to synthesize findings, create reports, et cetera. But what's often missing from our job postings are the behavioral needs. Remember, if I talk about that person who's trying to hire a call center rep, and he was looking for experience to prove somebody could actually sit at a computer, do a repetitive job, follow a process, not get bored. He was trying to find that on the resume. What we understand is that there are certain behavioral needs for each job. So for example, in this job, well, I need somebody who's going to be able to be really focused, detail-oriented, follow processes, somebody who is going to be comfortable with a lot of repetition and working on their own, working independently by themselves. So this is the piece that we're going to focus in on. How do I not only find the type of person that I need for the job, but how do I go out and communicate to that person to attract them to the role? So starting with the behavioral needs. If we look at the PI for this job, this would be the job target. And again, this isn't the PI class, so I won't go into depth about A, B, C, D, but these are the 4 key drives that we're looking for. And what I know about this particular job target is I want somebody who's a perfectionist, somebody who likes to get things right, doesn't want to make mistakes, process-oriented, comfortable working independently on their own for long periods of time. In fact, prefers it. Somebody's going to be patient with repetition. Although they follow the process, they're comfortable if day in and day out, there's a lot of wash, rinse, and repeat. So this is the job target that I'm looking for. To give you a couple of examples of how job targets are going to be different, even in the same role, let's go back to the call center example. The role that person was hiring for was an inbound call center rep. This is somebody who's basically waiting for the phone to ring, picking it up and solving a problem. They're answering a billing question. They're solving a technical issue. They're following a process. And if they don't know how to actually solve this problem, they know who to escalate it to. And when they're done with that one issue, listening intently, making sure that the customer on the other side of the phone feels heard, understood, they go on to the next one. And they're comfortable doing that all day long. I've got, again, comfort with repetition, very responsive to the needs of others, more of a listener than a talker, somebody who's friendly, but somebody who's really more about process and perfection and not making mistakes, and very comfortable with that repetition. This is an inbound call center rep. What about if I have in that same call center, somebody sitting right next to that person or across the hall that is an outbound call center rep? What does this person need to do? Well, they need to go out there and make calls, sell stuff, collect money, right? Whatever it might be, make appointments. So I need somebody now who's going to be proactive, driven to take action, somebody who's going to want to take the lead in the conversation, keep somebody on the phone, influence and persuade them to take a certain action. And then, by the way, when they hang up on me, I got to be comfortable going to the next call and just going right at it all day long. And that's going to excite me. So the person on the right, outbound call center, is going to have much different behaviors. Once I define this job target, 2 things happen. One, I've got a standard of excellence against which to look at our candidates to make sure we get the right person in the right job. But it's also going to create a job report that will allow me to pull verbiage out that we'll use in our job postings. And that's where we're headed today. So let's talk a little bit. If you're thinking about your job postings, first off, if your job, not your job posting, but your job targets, if your job targets are not great, then the verbiage you're going to get from them and the results you'll get when you match candidates will also not be great. So we need to think about the fact that we've got these 4 factors and we need good definition of behaviors, which means For example, I want to make sure I don't have a whole lot of overlap. Notice, let's go right to the bottom. These job targets that are not effective is because I don't have really good definition. So for those of you who are PI practitioners and understand factor combinations, I don't really have good definition of factor combinations. I have some factors where I want way too much variety. On the top, more effective, they're wide enough that I can define what are the top 3 or 4 key behaviors I need to have in this job day in and day out for excellence over time. The factor combinations are well distinguished, so I know what I'm looking for. And the individual ranges are reasonable in length so that I can actually do a good job at sorting who are the best candidates that are most likely to enjoy the job, and then where are those that are really unlikely to enjoy the work that we're going to ask them to do. So make sure you've got good definition in your factors and factor combinations when you're creating your job targets. Once you have that, then this is how we're going to use the verbiage that comes out of your job report. First off, our goal, how do we attract candidates who are going to be a good behavioral fit for the role? And then almost as important, how do we repel people that are not going to be a good fit? I want to create a job posting where somebody looks at that and the right person says, that's me. What is this? I haven't even read the rest of the job description yet, but I already know they're talking about me and I'm excited. I also want somebody who's not a good fit for the job to read it and go, that sounds awful. This is not something that I would want to do. And I'm not even going to read any further, right? So what we're trying to do is help you on the front end, really sift and filter through your applicants so that the ones that are more likely to enjoy the job are the ones more likely to apply. So how we're going to do that is take the verbiage that comes out of your job report, and we're going to put that into our job postings and have them say, that sounds like me. And what we're going to do is actually lead your job posting with that section that says about you, that attracts and talks about that candidate. So this little tagline here, you can train experience, but you can't train behavioral drives. Yeah, I'll say that right eventually. This goes back to what I talked about before. If I can find the right behaviors and the right cognitive for a potential fit to any job that I can train those. I can train the experience, I can train the skills. I can get people the knowledge and the experience they need to do well in the job. But I want to start by finding the stuff they're going to enjoy doing. So here's the job report. First off, for those of you who haven't seen this, when you create a job target, as soon as you finalize that job target, there's a tab you can click on that says job report, and it gives you a report. It's going to show you some reference profiles, but we never really want to hire to a reference profile. It's too much of a general expression of, yeah, here's some things that these people might have in common. But what we really want to do an effective job in hiring and attracting the right candidates is define a little bit more thoroughly and in a nuanced way than our reference profiles. And really what I want to focus in on is the narrative here. You've taken the PI report and you remember you took the PI report, you finished it, the words that were in your assessment resonated with you in such a way that when you read through the report, you said, oh my gosh, that's just like me. I mean, how did they get that out of such a small and short assessment? So what we want to do is reverse engineer that same type of psychology in our job postings. The job report these are words that are going to resonate both with the hiring manager. The hiring manager, if we've done a good job at building our job targets, going to read through this summary and job characteristics and say, give me 100 of those. That's exactly what I want in this job. And if you let a potential applicant read through this, they say, yeah, I see myself in this. This is exactly how I operate. So all we're going to do is we're going to take words. I'm going to show you a couple examples, and then we're going to break through how do you do it. We're going to take the summary and the characteristics, and we're going to carve out of that some key bullet points that are going to resonate with the right applicant. Okay, so this is the client support. By the way, I will say that here at MindWire, we practice what we preach. So when we put job postings out there, we're doing exactly what we're talking about today. This is an example of a client support specialist that we had recently hired. And you'll see this top section, all MindWire job postings start with a section that says about you. Not about the company, about MindWire, and here's how long we've been in business, et cetera. Not even about the job, but they're going to start with here's who you are. In this case, we're not going to post, obviously, the job target, but this is what the verbiage was drawn from. I want somebody who's going to be resonating, that's going to read this and say, this is me. You love using your experience to coach, teach, share, and selflessly help others to succeed, right? That's that high B, that low A, the people orientation. Team player, enjoy providing helpful, high quality support and services, etc. Right? Thrive when you have a variety of tasks, projects, and challenges on your plate. Sense of urgency, but notice here, with strong attention to detail. And it's important for you to get things exactly right. So what am I saying? I want a friendly person who likes supporting others, who likes to move fast, but wants to get things done right. Careful, thoughtful decision maker. Enjoy having clear expectations. I want to know what good looks like. That's an accelerator for me. So tell me, give me the process, help me understand. Excellent written and interpersonal communication skills, exceptional organizational skills. You're going to throw some things in there that are also going to be clerical in nature. But notice this is all about you, the person, behaviors. So if I am hiring for a different position, I'm going to have different verbiage. This happens to be our job posting for our VP of Marketing and Client Experience. You're a natural persuader, communicator, and storyteller. This actually has a story attached to it as well. I'm going to read through a couple bullet points, and I'm going to tell you about our VP of Marketing and Client Experience and how this particular job posting resonated with her. You excel at making connections to people, motivating and inspiring them, building buy-in and engagement, and persuading people to take action and achieve results. Fast-paced, thrive when you have multiple interesting challenges in your plate. I'm not going to read through all of it because you can read it, but this is the posting that we put out for a VP of Marketing and Client Experience. Within, I think, 24 hours, we had over 100 applicants. Before we shut down the job posting, we had about 250 applicants. We narrowed it down to 10 and then to 5 and then to 3, and the 3 finalists went through numbers of interviews, et cetera. But notice what we started with is like behaviors and then resume and then got to interviews, et cetera. Candace, who's our wonderful VP of Marketing and Client Experience, happened to be in a PI training I was doing as she came on board. And when we talked about this concept of actually creating job posting using PI verbiage, I saw her, it was a virtual training, kind of look away and go off screen. And she came back and she said, I had no idea the Jedi mind trick that you played on me. She said, I realized as you were talking about it, that what I felt when I read the job posting, which is this job is perfect for me, it's because you wrote it for me, didn't you? And we said, yep, we actually did. So this is a real life story. And by the way, so is every person that we've hired at MindWire, including our manager of accounting. So let me talk now about how do you do this? I've given you a couple of examples, but for our manager of accounting, we've got different behaviors, right? I want somebody who's going to be very technically oriented, somebody who's going to be fast-paced, but a perfectionist, somebody who's going to be more about getting stuff done accurately, quickly, et cetera. So we've got to fill in the about you section, right? The rest of it's going to come with it, right? What's the company? What's the job, et cetera? What are the educational needs? I would just say, look at your job postings and figure out how much of the criteria you're using are based on you're trying to make a bet on success, or how much is really absolutely needed in terms of experience, in terms of credentialing. Because if you can train, why not attract the right person and get them on board? So if I look at the job report for this job target, this is the manager of accounting job target, then what we do is we look at the summary first, and then we start highlighting or identifying, underlining certain things within that summary that really we think will resonate with that person. High degree and specialized expertise, pace of work faster than average, but quality is never compromised, right? Technical expertise, demonstration of the values of integrity, quality, and caution. This section in the middle had to do with leadership characteristics. We weren't hiring an actual manager of people. It was manager of process. So we didn't need to really highlight things there. So as you're looking through your job postings, think about this particular role and really what's going to be important for the person that you want to put in this role. Demonstrates a sense of urgency, assures consistent achievement of high quality standards. So that's the first thing. Highlight some things in the summary. Then you go to that next section. Well, first off, just to show you, that's all we really took out of the job summary, just pieces of it, right? Not the whole thing. And we're not going to lift and use the exact words out of the PI report. We just want to get ourselves a starting point, kind of an inventory of characteristics. Speaking of characteristics, the next section are the bullet points called job characteristics. And we did basically the same thing, right? What are the things that we really want to focus on for this particular job? Multiple simultaneous projects, expert-based problem solving, accepted quality standards, communication is task-based, technically oriented. Once you do that, you've got these two sections, you've highlighted some things, you now have a list. So these are all the things, the bullets that we highlighted in the job summary and job characteristics. Now all we need to do is translate that into sentences that will resonate with a human being. There is some repetition in here, right? There's going to be some overlap. So you're not going to cut and paste directly out of the report, but you're going to create an about you section that speaks to the person. You pride yourself in having technical expertise and strong problem-solving skills. Obviously, right, came out of this. You demonstrate the values of integrity, quality, and attentiveness. You like to get things right. You do want to make sure you've got some, kind of personality in your postings, if you will. So you like to get things right with exclamation points didn't come out of the job report, but we know that's what it's saying. And that's what we want to actually have resonate with the person who reads the job posting. You thrive when the pace of work is faster than average, while never compromising quality. Comfortable with multiple simultaneous projects. Communication is task-based. You work with a sense of urgency. So one thing I want to point out is, yes, you want to craft these into sentences that are actually human sentences with things like you like to get things done right. But also notice this doesn't just say you are. It says you pride yourself in, you demonstrate you thrive with, you are comfortable with multiple simultaneous projects. Your communication is, you work with a sense of urgency. So the one thing that I would point out as you craft that is give it some variety. They all do start off with you sentences because we want this to resonate with the person, but they're not just you are this, you are that, you are the other thing. It's you pride yourself, you thrive in, you demonstrate, so that when it's read by the person, it feels more like a narrative. But that's really it. Get some bullet points out of your job report, craft those into, 4, 5, 6 bullet points that you're comfortable with, and then just start your job posting off that way. Right? So about you, these are the 6 bullet points we just came up with on the previous screen. So far, here, any questions or anything? Because I have not been looking at the chat.
No questions so far. But again, feel free to pop in any questions that you have as we keep going. I'll be sure to bring them up.
So this, again, we had the same impact on our accounting manager. Amanda is our accounting manager. When she read through these bullet points, she's like, do they know me? Because this is exactly me. And then we get people in the jobs that, because we've defined the job target around the actual job we need somebody to do, and we've done that custom internally, that when they start doing the work we've asked them to do, they're going to feel good about that work. So part of it is let's attract the right candidate so that when the candidate gets on board, they start doing the work and they're just as excited, they're just as enthused, they're just as engaged, and they want to keep doing that work, which is going to lead to higher levels of retention and engagement right off the bat. Not only do we use it internally, but we do have other clients that do. So names have been taken out, but we do actually have a real life example where the About You section came directly from the job report for this PI client. And I believe there are some people on this call that have also played around with using the job targets and to create verbiage for their job postings. And we'll probably tell you that it is a differentiator. It's a game changer. These are some things that you want to be thinking about. I can set myself apart as an employer of choice, right? By putting the About You section at the top. In other words, when somebody's reading through all these job postings and it either talks about the company ABCD or the job and the number of years of experience, et cetera, they're all going to start sounding the same. But when I read the job posting that's speaking to me and using behavioral language at the top of the job posting, you thrive with, you demonstrate, you are, then I'm more attracted to the job. It's probably also going to stick into my head a little bit longer, right? And they can kind of picture themselves in the role you're asking them to do. And if that picture sounds great, then they'll move forward with the process and you've got a higher chance of success. And if the picture that they paint for themselves is that sounds miserable, maybe if they're just trying to spray and put in a whole bunch of applicants or applications in to try to get a job somewhere, maybe you'll keep that person from adding you to the list of 50 jobs they're applying for today, because the job that they read right away was not something they'd want to do anyway. Again, cleaning up your pipeline so that it's a little bit more focused and narrow, right? Here's the other thing. When you're using tools like this, give yourself credit for this. Not a lot of organizations, not enough, are actually using tools like this to understand the human being they're trying to hire for the job. So talk about, don't apologize for having to send assessments. What we're doing is we're trying to help get people into positions they're going to enjoy doing. We're a strength-based company, right, that tries to get people in the roles that they're going to love doing. And once they're within our company, we're also going to try and, as they grow and have promotion opportunities, we're going to try to figure out career paths that really resonate. So the whole idea is never apologize for using tools like predictive index to be able to identify what strengths are going to be behaviorally and cognitively, because it's something that we're doing for people. It's something that we're doing also for us, so we get people who are engaged, but happy people give you better outcomes, right? So take credit for being a company that's thinking enough about people, external people we want to bring into the company, and also those that are all part of our family already. Here's some other tips when you're thinking about using the PI. Administer assessments early and always. Some clients start by looking at resume first, and then they send the assessments to the resumes that look good. But we talked about this before. If I'm just looking at resume, a couple things are happening. I'm probably bringing a whole bunch of people into the conversation that are not necessarily going to be good behavioral fits for the job. And resume does not give me a good predictor of future success. The other thing is I'm missing out on all those people who may be just perfect behavioral and cognitive fits to the job, but I never see them because I'm using that piece of paper first. So when I use the assessments first, I can see past imperfect resumes. I can see past a resume that doesn't have the specific experience that I'm looking for and find people who are more likely to be trainable. This is basically saying the same thing, right? See past seemingly perfect resume. Oh yeah. So the seemingly perfect resume is the one that, again, looks great. Maybe they would interview well, but you can tell by the behavioral match, they're very unlikely to succeed in the job. So when I administer the PI early and often, I'm really looking at that as kind of my entry level. I need to make sure that they've got a certain amount of connection to the job behaviorally before I worry about who I'm going to hire. And then we talked about this before, save yourself significant phone screening time and time sorting through resumes for people who are unlikely to enjoy the job, et cetera.
One more thing, Dave, too, on administering the assessments early. Can you talk about how that affects diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of resumes and experience for diverse candidates?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Hero. When we think about sometimes when we're dealing with DE&I issues, we're looking for experience somebody may not have, right? Because of their position, because of their position in life, their past opportunities. And so we kind of maintain that unintentional bias by only looking for people who have actually done specific jobs or have experience to point to. Remember, the PI does not really have any, the PI is going to be the same, how am I going to say this? Sorry about this. The PI doesn't know whether somebody's man, woman, what their ethnic background is, at really anything, right? So it's completely unbiased in terms of it's just telling you about workplace behaviors, and you can match those up against the job. Sometimes when we're looking at resume first, we're actually looking for a level of experience somebody may not have had the opportunity to get yet. And you might be able to provide that opportunity to somebody because you see they're more likely to enjoy the job they're doing right off the bat. Good point. Any other points on that, Hero? I think that
no, we've got some questions in the chat about sharing verbiage that'll help describe how you use PI in the hiring process. So I just want to point out, absolutely, after we end here, I'll be sharing some of that with everyone on the call today.
Awesome. Yep, we've got a lot of information that we're going to be sharing. Another best practice is I just went over, use the PI interview guide questions. So for those of you who have used the PI job targeting, you're probably also using the interview guide. But the interview guide is wonderful because what I can do is have good, scientifically proven and solid objective-based, experience-based questions, but they might be different questions for two different candidates who are both applying for the same job. Because what it's going to do is look at that candidate against that job, and it's going to supply you with a list of questions that will either confirm where they are a good behavioral fit to the job, or it's going to allow you to kind of explore their ability to bridge a gap if they're not a perfect fit to the job. So the interview guide is another scientifically based instrument that's going to help you really be able to leverage the science and data of getting the right person in the right seat and exploring when I've got maybe a factor or two that are a little bit off. Tracking your data and performance is a really good idea. Red, yellows, and greens are ways that we can kind of put candidates into general buckets. So are we hiring more greens, right? Are we trying to avoid hiring a lot of reds? And when we do either of those things, what's happening? What's the result 6 months, years down the road? And so what we can really be doing is looking and tracking performance against the behavioral fit and make sure that we're on track. And what I love about the PI job target is you can change that, right? So it might be 6 months or a year later, you're thinking, you know what? I think we need to tweak this job target because the candidates we're getting in, maybe we're learning something. You can go back there and tweak it. And usually having that data, how well are we doing as we hire against that job target, really helps us to continue to get better and better down the line. So yeah, looking back at data and making decisions based on facts, it's a good way to ensure success in the future. So another question that we have that comes up is, yeah, but if I start using the PI up front, won't I actually just drop my applicants down because people don't want to take the assessment? And we've actually not had that happen. Our clients have said there's no significant drop in applicants. What you might miss is the person that's kind of spraying and praying and getting on there wants to just apply for 50 jobs because they're trying to find something. Maybe that person doesn't want to stop and take a 6-minute assessment. But for the most part, somebody who's looking for a job that's serious about it, and especially if the job posting just spoke to me and said, this is all about you, for sure, I'm going to click on that link and take a quick assessment. So we actually haven't had that happen, although that's something that comes up. So we wanted to bring that up. And then, internally, you're going to be setting job targets. And so when we're looking for promotions and for internal movement, why not use the same kind of postings internally to attract the people we need? The benefit we have of our internal incumbents is we already have their BA. We already have their behavioral assessment. And remember that our core behaviors don't change over time, that we are who we are. So if you have an employee who took the PI 5 years ago, that's still going to be true and resonate and be awesome. And it's going to be a great source of being able to enhance communication, motivation, coaching more effectively, but also getting the right people internally into the right seats when there's times for being able to move people. So the PI interview guide and coaching guide are both similar. I talked about the interview guide being specific about the candidate as compared to the job. Coaching guide does the same type of thing. So, for example, in the coaching guide, I'll be looking now at a track record of performance. Maybe it's 6 months into the job or periodically as that person's doing the job. I can identify where their strengths are based on their performance, and I can maybe identify some gaps. And the coaching guide might allow us to get some of the answers, right? Maybe the ways that they're really excelling at the job are because they're a natural fit to the behaviors needed for the job. Well, let's continue to encourage them. Let's get excited about those strengths they're bringing to the table and have really good conversations to make sure that we're sustaining that really good work. And then we might find that as people struggle, it might be because there's a gap somewhere between their natural behaviors and what the job needs. This is our opportunity to help them stretch, to have conversations, to get additional coaching, maybe some training, whatever it might be. But the coaching guide allows us to compare ongoing performance to how that person connects against the job and have more intelligent, more meaningful conversations. Other tools, for example, personal development charts. When people read their PI, normally one of the first things that they'll ask me at the end is, okay, where's the bad stuff, Dave? Because as I read through my own PI report, it all sounds great. And my answer is, it sounds great because it's you and you like you, right? And everything resonated. But we all know how sometimes we've got to maybe modify our own behaviors to be more effective in groups, on teams, with others. So tools like the personal development chart and manager development chart, they allow us to look at not only what are my natural strengths in a role, but what are some cautions? How might I come across to others, especially others that are different than me? And what might be some tips to better connect with those who are different than me? And then we've got things like management strategy guides, where a leader can sit down with an employee who's maybe reviewed a list of 12 things that probably are going to resonate with them in terms of how they like to be managed, what are their needs. And maybe in advance, that manager said, you know what, pick one or two things on this list that really do resonate with you, and let's have a conversation. And maybe this is something we do 1, 2, 3 times a year, and that's it. But it allows the manager to think intentionally about how do I better connect with that person. So just to kind of remind you that once we actually have that standard of excellence, that job target in place, not only can we attract the right candidate, but once we've gotten them on board, we can better engage, help managers build trust. Something to have you harken back to, a few months back, we did a webinar on onboarding using PI tools. If you didn't catch that, you'll want to get with your MindWire rep and get some more details on it. And that's, how do I take the tools that come directly out of PI and help a manager, maybe even if they don't have a ton of PI training, more effectively make connections in a very structured way. First 2 weeks on the job, within the first 30 to 45 days, 3 months, 6 months, et cetera, in really quick and easy, but impactful conversations that are guided by the data we have based on how this human's wired. So all of things that you can do to continue to sustain engagement once you brought that perfect person into the role. All right, so in conclusion, then I want to make sure we've got time for any questions people might have. We can create job targets, and once those job targets are right, that defines a standard of excellence in the role. And then we can use the language from that job target, specifically the summary and the characteristic sections, to pull out and then redesign some bullet points that are going to specifically attract the candidate. We can set ourselves apart from everybody else who's just talking about number of years experience and about us and why our company's so great. And let's focus in on being maybe one of the only ones out there that's actually resonating with the human being reading the ad and getting them excited about it. And then just keep in mind, if we're using the assessments on the front end, then we're way more likely to find people who are way more likely to enjoy the job they're doing, to excel and give us high performance with consistency over time. And that's our goal. So wrapping this all up, and then I'll open it up for questions. After this, here's going to make sure that you all receive this recording and the slides from this situation, plus the verbiage pieces, the communication template for applicants. How do we take credit for and communicate to applicants what we're doing? She's also going to send you step-by-step guides on how do I create the right job targets? How do I finalize it and make sure that we've got input from our hiring managers? So they're a collaborative part of the process of defining that standard of excellence internally. And then if you have more questions on any of this, you want to have your MindWire professional spend a little bit more time on this with you again, or really anything that we've talked about, including the onboarding with PI tools, just reach out to your Mindwire rep or send a email to support@mindwiregroup.com, and we'll answer any questions that you might have.
One big question we've got coming through are some requests for how to communicate back to candidates after they've been rejected, particularly if we've used the PI as the basis for rejecting them. So I do want to say we recommend giving more of a general rejection announcement in terms of their qualifications not matching, or that you've identified more qualified candidates and that's the reason they're not moving through the pipeline. So I'll put that on the follow-up that we'll send out some examples for that as well. And keep an eye out for our next webinar. We'll be announcing that soon. It's going to be on June 15th, and we're going to be talking about coaching and development of employees and how you can use PI tools for coaching and developing. So after you've already hired them with these great job ads, thanks Dave, how can you keep them, retain them, coach and develop them using the tools you already have? Mary's got a question. Do we always recommend sending out the PI even before you've spoken to the candidates?
Yes. Yes, for sure. Again, a 6-minute assessment is going to tell you volumes about a person. I always mention, if you've read your own PI report and you're like, this is so accurate, I can't believe it. Imagine having that much information about somebody before you talk to them, before you consider interviewing them. How are they wired? So yes, we definitely recommend sending out the PI early and often, and using that as part of your screening process of who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to phone screen? Whose resume do I want to look closer at? So really good question.
Yeah, something we found really effective at Mindwire is adding in a communication touch point after they've hit apply. You can set up automated messages through a lot of servers like Indeed. And the first message being a bit of that explanation of, we were really interested. Thanks for applying. We want to get to know you better by asking you to take these assessments. So again, taking credit for being an assessment strength-based organization and asking them in that first email communication right up front. So we found that really effective to just put in an email communication with a few of those sentences, asking why or explaining why you wanted to take it, and then sending it up front. Great question.
All right. Well, we thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. And for those of you that asked, I'll include the FSU, Florida State University meta-analysis in the follow-up information for you all as well. So thanks, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Appreciate it.